Amy, boy, it seems like we're learning that those wonderful pronouncements from the Obama administration about the chemical weapons caches of Assad and Syria being eliminated, and we trust our Russian allies there, uh, as well as North Korea's nuclear program being forestalled, as well as our new partner in peace, Iran, being serious about Middle East stability and not interested in their own nuclear weapons program. Gosh, it seems like a lot of that stuff isn't bearing out to be true as deeper digs are done. We know about the chemical weapons attack, the sarin gas that Assad used on his own people a couple of weeks ago. Now we have Rex on, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, the other day talking about what the Iranians are actually doing.
Iran has conducted cyber attacks against the United States and our Gulf partners. Iran has been behind terrorist attacks throughout the rest of the world, including a plot to kill Adel al-Jubeir, who was then the Saudi ambassador to the United States. Whether it be assassination attempts, support of weapons of mass destruction, deploying destabilizing militias, Iran spends its treasure and time disrupting peace. Iran continues to have one of the world's worst human rights records. Political opponents are regularly jailed or executed, reaching the agonizing low point of executing juveniles and individuals whose punishment is not proportionate to their crime. Iran arbitrarily detains foreigners, including U.S. citizens, on false charges. Several U.S. citizens remain missing or unjustly imprisoned in Iran. Apart from the abuses inside Iran's own borders, it is the threat it poses to the rest of the world. Iran's nuclear ambitions are a grave risk to international peace and security.
That doesn't sound like such a partner in peace, and that's what President Trump had to say yesterday, reiterating that last piece of what Rexon offered.
I think they are doing a tremendous disservice to an agreement that was signed. It was a terrible agreement. It shouldn't have been signed. It shouldn't have been negotiated the way it was negotiated. I'm all for agreements, but that was a bad one, as bad as I've ever seen negotiated. They are not living up to the spirit of the agreement. I can tell you that.
That turns out to be kind of a problem. And for more on this topic, as well as North Korea, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Cliff May, president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Cliff, thanks for being with us. And what about what the Secretary of State and the President of the United States had to say about Iran over the last couple of days?
Well, Iran has been for a long time a threat, and it's become a worse threat under the Obama administration. It became a worse threat because we signed a deal that President Obama said was going to stop it from gaining a nuclear weapons capability, but at very most delays it, and in fact gives it a path to nuclear capability, welcoming it into the club in about a decade, a little more perhaps, depending on how much it abides by the agreement. But at that point, even if it remains what it is today, the leading sponsor of terrorism around the world, even if it remains dedicated, as it has been for more than two generations, to death to America and genocide of Israel, we're saying it's okay. You still get to be a member of the nuclear club. This is a problem that was made worse during the Obama years, and now President Trump has to figure out what to do about this and other problems that are maturing around the world.
Well, what can he do, especially about Iran?
Well, about Iran, there's a number of things. Well, I would say that since Iran remains the leading sponsor of terrorism in the world, since it is enabling the carnage in Syria, we can have sanctions on Iran for those transgressions. That has nothing to do with the nuclear weapons agreement. And if we start to do that, we can begin again to put pressure on the Iranian economy rather than reward Iran with billions of dollars as we have been doing. I think that's part of it. I think the deal with Boeing is a very big mistake. I hope President Trump will understand that and not think that this is a great jobs program, because the planes that are sold to Iran will be used for military purposes. I think we know that, and we know they're using planes for military purposes right now. So I would start with Iran with sanctions. I would not tolerate any violations of the agreement. And I would not encourage other nations and other businesses, including Boeing, to be doing business with the leading sponsor of terrorism in the world at this point.
Moving around to other axis of evil states, let's talk a little North Korea. Take a listen to what President Trump had to say yesterday in his presser with the Italian Prime Minister as to North Korea and how he's trying to work North Korea through President Xi and the Chinese.
We're slowing up a little bit. I actually told him, I said, you'll make a much better deal on trade if you get rid of this menace or do something about the menace of North Korea, because that's what it is. It's a menace right now.
Kind of a startling bout of transparency there from the President of the United States to say, essentially, I'm willing to trade on trade for China to quell the North Korean regime.
Indeed. I mean, I think because President Trump does seem to recognize that this is a fast-maturing threat that nothing has been done about over the last 8 years, and one could say over the last 23 years or so since you had something called an agreed framework under President Clinton, which was another bad deal made to stop nuclear weapons capability in the hands of a rogue nation. President Clinton said, we've done it through diplomacy, and of course it didn't happen that way at all. So he's trying to say to China, look, there'll be carrots and there'll be sticks, and I think both will be needed if we're going to get China to be helpful on this, and that would be the best outcome. China can do something about North Korea, but China won't do something unless it feels it's very much in its interest. Part of what this is going to require is for China to feel that if it does not get involved in a productive and helpful way on North Korea, we will take the problem onto our own hands in ways that are not in the Chinese national interest.
How about your reaction to President Trump, angering South Koreans by saying basically that they were once part of China?
Yeah, look, Trump is Trump, and he says things that are unhelpful and undiplomatic. I'm glad to see that Tillerson is getting pretty good at this game, and I think the same is true of Mattis and McMaster. But no, that's whatever the history is. I don't see how that helps the situation whatsoever. The main thing right now for China is to recognize a number of things. One is that if they do not do something about North Korea, this is a problem they can deal with and should have. Then we're going to first of all see missile defense set up in South Korea and in Japan, and that missile defense system can be used against China as well as North Korea, and that's simply going to happen. We should be doing a lot more missile defense anyhow. We have the technical capability to stop missiles anywhere in the world from reaching their targets. We just have not been willing to do that. I don't really understand why. Maybe I do, but I think it's a mistake when we have that technological capability not to deploy it. Secondly, China has to understand that it won't be long before Japan, for sure, has its own nuclear capability. That's something else they don't want. And then in terms of cyber and other responses, military responses, these are very dangerous things, but I have no doubt that the military is looking at its various options at this point. You've got a regime that has been building, that has nuclear weapons, is testing missiles, trying to get a missile that can deliver a nuclear weapon to the continental United States. It's ruled by somebody who is not particularly, as we see it, rational. It's possible that he can't be deterred. Under the Obama administration, the policy was called strategic patience, which meant let's leave this for the next guy.
Nice translation. I like the point about missile defense systems as well. And I want to get your take on the sixth terrorist attack in Paris, Islamic terrorist attack in Paris in the last 3 years, and how you see that impacting the French presidential election on Sunday.
Well, here's the thing about the presidential election. I'm not going to say how the French voters are going to decide in this round. That's beyond my pay grade. What I will say is that terrorism has now been put high on the agenda, which it wasn't looking at the polls beforehand. I mean, the French and other Europeans are very eager to put that issue behind them and think that they don't have a serious problem. They have for years. The French have a very serious problem. There's something called the S list in France. There are about 10,000 people on it, all of whom they worry about becoming terrorists. There's no way that French law enforcement and French intelligence can successfully, on a day-by-day basis, monitor, much less surveil, all these people. You never know when somebody who is watching beheadings and suicide bombings online for entertainment every day will decide it's time for me to join the other martyrs and do something about this. this problem is going to get worse in Europe if the flow of migrants continues. 99% of the migrants are not going to become terrorists, but a percentage will, and the more you have coming in, the more you have a problem with that. And then there are those who are coming in who won't do it themselves, but will be supportive of it, sometimes in material ways, and sometimes they will be morally supportive. They will say that somebody who draws a picture of Mohammed deserves to die, and that's a hard person to integrate and assimilate into French society without changing French society very dramatically.
He is Cliff May, president of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Cliff, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate your insights.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.